Okay, I'm going to look at the phone as soon as Frank starts. Start.
Okay. Oh, you want me to start? Okay, I'm just going to read this at this point. I know that I'll speak it when we do it, but welcome to today's program, everyone. I'm Frank Schroeder, the chairman of the board and chief executive officer of the Friends of Park County. Is that okay, Gene?
Yes.
Our program is going to run about 1 hour.
Don't weaken.
Don't we? Our program is going to run about 1 hour, and we're going to leave 15 minutes of that for Q&A. The program is being recorded, and you'll be able to find a link to it on our website in a few days. The mission of Friends at Park County is to promote thoughtfully planned growth in order to protect and enhance Park County's vibrant communities, sustainable working lands, and healthy natural resources. We were founded to work on just one single issue: how to manage growth in Park County, especially growth in Livingston and the rural areas between our communities. Since November of 2020, we have been testifying before the Livingston Planning Board and the Park County Planning Board, offering very specific critiques and recommendations as these two boards grapple with how to plan for growth coming to Park County. On our website, friendsofparkcounty.org, you can see the principles we advocate and the detailed testimony we have been offering to the city and the county. We encourage you to read it. If you agree with it, please let us know by becoming an endorser. There's a spot on the website for you to do just that. Our website also contains information about upcoming events, like the County Planning Board on Thursday. Yeah, it'll be that Thursday afternoon. Now, is there a Livingston Planning Board that next Tuesday?
Yes.
The day
Okay.
before.
On the 16th. On the 16th.
They're
Or on 17th, rather. 17th. Okay. About upcoming events like the Livingston Planning Board meeting tomorrow evening and the County Planning Board the following evening, Thursday afternoon. As usual, we will be testifying before both boards and hope you will join us in speaking up for sensible growth management. My perspective on growth in Park County reflects both my 20 years of living here, but also my service of 13 years on the Park County Planning Board, as well as service on a range of other boards here. I was on the County Planning Board when we adopted the update of our growth policy in 2017. My co-founders are Gene Keffler, who also served on the County Planning Board with me, and Ken Cochran. Okay.
So can I
So
stop
Gene,
you there?
what else would you like? I'm sorry?
How you want to do this? I want to insert something. Did you want to run through the whole thing, or what do you want to do?
Well, if I'm only going to do 2 lines, 2 or 3 lines on each of you, maybe you can tell me what you would like me to mention.
That's fine, but that's not what I want to insert. Back in the paragraph 2 up, where you talk about the planning board meeting Wednesday, tomorrow evening, and then the county planning board evening, Thursday afternoon. I think
Right.
it'd be helpful if we add a sentence that says, you can find our written testimony on our website under the event page for each of these events. That gets them looking at our webpage and gets them looking at our written testimony.
If I
All
may,
right, send me a link.
if I may say
Go
so,
ahead.
maybe we don't edit it right now, but you can aggregate those 3 different, testimonies, Frank, into one and send it out. And Ken, if you have any other changes, or Gene, you can make them. I just have a feeling we could get really bogged down right now in wordsmithing stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm taking
All right,
notes
so
as we go, and I think all of you should. Things you want to fix or change or have questions about.
okay.
We can wordsmith.
So then, now that you know
Robert.
Yeah. Now that you know a little bit about the three of us, but just after, now you know a little bit about the three of us, but after just a few months, we have had help and support from a growing number of people, including our donors. We don't have time to mention all of you by name, but know, please, that we really appreciate your support. More about that at the end of the program. The three of us have a lot of professional experience, but we knew that we could benefit from the skills and experience of people who've been doing this kind of work for decades. And that is why we called on help from Dennis Click, Director of Future West, and Robert Liberty. I will let them introduce themselves, and then Robert will begin his presentation. Dennis.
Well, thank you, Frank. I'm Dennis Glick, the Director of Future West. And through information, training, technical assistance, we address growth and change in the Northern Rockies to benefit people, protect landscapes, and conserve natural values. For many years before founding Future West, I did similar work for the Greater Yellowstone Coalition and the Sonoran Institute, and I've lived in Livingston for 31 years and have seen some progress and a lot of lost opportunities in managing growth and development, and have the scars to prove it. I think we have one of the last windows of opportunity to protect Park County from being overwhelmed by sprawl. That's why I'm glad Future West is able to work with Friends of Park County to save my own city and my own county from the fate of so many other places in the Northern Rockies. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Robert Liberty, who I've had the pleasure to know for more than a quarter century. Robert, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here and a chance to talk about rural residential sprawl. What is it? Can you stop it? Here's what I'm going to cover today. First of all, my credentials. Do I know what I'm talking about? What is rural sprawl and what is rural residential sprawl? Why should we be concerned about rural residential sprawl? How serious of a problem is it? Can it be stopped? How have other places stopped rural residential sprawl? What do you do about the pre-existing stuff? And how do we get started stopping sprawl in Park County? So a little bit about my background. I have 40 years of work in land use and transportation planning. I've worked on forest land protection, rangeland protection, farmland protection, compact growth strategies, infill redevelopment, transportation, housing policy. I've done this work as an attorney, as an elected official, as a consultant. I run university programs. I've worked all over the United States in different parts of the world, including in Montana. And I've had a wide variety of clients reflecting a range of perspectives and interests, everything from governments to developers to nonprofit organizations. But what about rural sprawl, the protection of forest range and farmlands? Well, I spent about 12 years reviewing, revising, evaluating, monitoring, and enforcing farm range and forest zoning in Oregon. And yes, I know that looks like Montana, but that's actually Oregon. I've done that in different capacities. I've done that again as an attorney. I was also a county land use hearings officer, administering rural zoning, and I'm currently the chair of the Clem River Gorge Commission, which administers the National Scenic Area in partnership with the Forest Service. I've had a wide variety of clients and partners and co-workers in this effort to protect farm range and forest lands. Here's some of them listed, including Future West. And I've worked with a wide range of people. These are ranchers, farmers, foresters. The people here on the screen grow cattle, grow trees, raise sheep, raise pears, and wine grapes. And the woman on the left, upper left, is actually the League of Women Voters working in small rural county. So I'm very familiar with the challenges of planning advocacy in those settings, but also the value of contributing to the protection lands that maintain these people's livelihoods. I also spent 2.5 years producing these 3 reports on how to stop sprawl, and I looked at efforts in all 50 states. So those are my credentials. What is rural sprawl anyway? Well, it includes a city sprawling into rural areas outside the city limits. So here's a Google Earth image from 6 miles south-southeast of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. As you can see on the screen over here on the right, it's actually warehouses and some commercial development, subdivisions here, golf course home sites, scattered home sites, and up here on the ridge, a few homes. So this is a spectrum of housing that's really taking advantage of the location Jackson Hole. It's like the city spilled out into the countryside. And that includes commercial development that you can often see on the outer edge of cities or in between cities, like these uses on Highway 89. What about rural residential sprawl, leaving aside the commercial, the industrial, and retail kinds of uses? Well, this is what it looks like to the west and north of you. This is the Gallatin Valley. But of course, there's plenty of it right in Park County. This is the area north of Livingston. So these are scattered rural home sites. Some people have said, well, what's the problem with 20-acre home sites? It's not really an issue. We have to be concerned about other things that have high impacts like tire dumps and mines and so on. So should we even care about 20-acre home sites? Well, I happened to check these 3 homes. They're almost exactly 20 acres each, 19.54 acres per house. How much is that? Well, if you take those same 3 houses and put them there, it's pretty much cover all of downtown Livingston and some of the neighborhoods. So one thing that shows is it uses a lot of land for a very small number of homes. This is 20 acres. So that's one of those home sites that you saw, 99 homes. Is it a serious problem? Well, there's my cursor just disappeared. This may be a little hard to see. This is actually, if you look in the lower left, you'll see there's a time scale. And it's scrolling from 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010 now, 2020, and 2030. And it's showing this growth of this yellow, which is ex-urban density. It's actually a map done by Dave Theobald, who's familiar with the situation here in Montana. And there's a lot of land now that is in this very low density pattern of development. Between 1950 and 2000, the amount of land at urban densities, that's more than 1 house per acre. That's pretty low density for urban, but anyway, increased from less than 1% to 2%. But the amount of land that was ex-urban, 1 to 40 acres, increased from 5% to 25% of all the private land in the United States. So if we put this on a map, the darkish brown color is urban suburban residential densities. It'd be an area about the size of North Carolina. But the ex-urban residential densities now occupy a land area equal to Texas, Pennsylvania, and New York. So this is a gigantic share of the American landscape. This is what it looks like in Gallatin County. These are all individual homes and subdivisions developed. And thanks to work done by Future West and Headwaters Economics, this is a pattern of homesite development starting in 1990. So 20 or 30 years worth and a projection to 2023. So you can see it's very substantial. I'm only showing you the core area along the Highway 89. Well, okay, so there's a lot of it. It covers a big area. Is it a problem? Should we be worried about it? Well, the first thing you have to think about is what it means for taxpayers. When you put homes scattered out over a big area and you have to provide roads and maintain roads, sheriffs for public safety, rural fire districts, school transportation, for just a few homes every few miles, it's very expensive. You're spending a lot of taxpayer dollars to provide those services. So taxpayers have a reason to be concerned. Well, if you care about farming, ranching, and forestry as a business, you ought to be concerned. So this was reported in the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. Since 1992 in the Gallatin Valley, it's lost roughly half, 66,000 acres of its irrigated land, according to data gathered by the Montana Natural Resource Information System. 66,000 acres is more than 100 square miles. If you superimpose a block of 66,000 acres in Gallatin County, that's how big it is. That is a lot of land. And there's a point at which enough land goes out of the ag economy, the business of agriculture, that suppliers and people do finance or process products pack up and leave. And that's happened in a lot of places. And then you can't even be engaged in farming or ranching because you don't have the supporting industries because there isn't enough production to support them. So you don't want to get to the tipping point. Water pollution. It's another thing to be concerned about. This is Fish Creek, a very important source of water, formerly in Teton County, Wyoming. You can see it's a beautiful stream. This is the sign you'll see along that creek. Bacterial levels in these waters at times exceeded recommended Department of Environmental Quality standards. Swimming or float tubing in these waters should be avoided. So you have a stream that is contaminated with human sewage to the level that you're not supposed to touch the water. It's not surprising. One household can generate 25,000 pounds of annual nutrient. Annual nutrient is a nice word for human waste. So this stream has been contaminated by 815 septic systems in Fish Creek watershed. So water pollution, another reason to be concerned. This is a map that's produced as part of the Livingston Growth Policy Update, and it shows septic permits issued in the gray area called the extraterritorial jurisdiction. You can see there's a lot of them. So we have reason to be concerned. In fact, the Director of Public Works in Livingston said it may be necessary to extend water and sewer to some of these areas because he anticipates there will be a problem with groundwater contamination. What about water depletion? Well, in 10 years, 2010 to 2019 inclusive, 605 new domestic wells were approved in Park County. In Montana, each person used about 76 gallons a day of well water. There's usually a little over 2 people per household. So 605 new wells means 95,000 gallons of water used a day in Park County, just for the new wells, 35 million gallons per year. So there's a reason to be concerned about whether there'll be adequate water. What about fire? Well, putting homes in the countryside, in the woods, is actually a cause of fire. It's very clear correlation. This is from Headwaters Economics, a June 2018 report. Thousands of homes have been built in high wildfire hazard areas. And in Park County, in the moderate and high hazard areas, in 1990, there were 1,713 homes. There's now double, 3,588. So there's 2 problems here. One, causing fires, and when the fire starts, firefighting resources go to protect lives and property. Other areas burn. So that's definitely a reason to be concerned about rural residential sprawl. What about wildlife? Well, there's a big game habitat. I mean, you live next to one of the most significant wildlife areas in North America, if not the most significant. You have a spectacular right of wildlife. A lot of them do not like to be fenced in. They don't like homes. They don't like dogs chasing them. So wildlife habitat is destroyed. Wildlife populations can fall and can be displaced. You can also have another problem that I've seen in some areas of the West. You end up having domesticated elk herds. They're not really part of a wildlife system anymore. They're more like the stray dogs that spend all the winter in town. All right, so a lot of reasons to be concerned about rural residential sprawl. A lot of people think it's inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way things are. Well, that's not true. There are places that have stopped sprawl. Here's one, a small town in Michigan called Frankenmuth. It's smaller than Livingston, 5,600 people. And you can see the town and the surrounding township, and you can see there's an edge. There's city, there's country. Here's a close-up. City, country. This is Winters, California, about the same size as Livingston. And once again, there's city, there's country. There's a close-up. A larger city, Corvallis, which is about the size of Bozeman, and like Bozeman has a state university there, Oregon State University. And not as crisp an edge to it, but definitely still an edge, as you can see. And finally, a larger city, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. By the way, Michigan and South Dakota, and some of these places probably don't strike you as places with strong planning traditions, but these are all good examples that show that even in a conservative state environment, you can achieve something significant in stopping sprawl. This is Sioux Falls, South Dakota, population 190,000, growing pretty rapidly now. This is the edge. So clear separation between city and country. So the question is, how have they done that? Well, look, no system is perfect. All of these have their weaknesses and imperfections, but there's almost nothing in life that's perfect. What we can say is that compared to most other places have been very successful. I want to be careful that neither I nor Friends of Park County endorse all of the parts of these approaches, but they are useful and they're relevant examples for you to consider. Let's take a look at Sioux Falls, which has been doing this kind of work for, 30 years, I think. And they've been intent on stopping sprawl, protecting farmland. This is an interesting quote from their plan, which they updated just a few years ago. And you notice it refers to the same arrangement you have in Livingston. The extraterritorial planning jurisdiction surrounding Sioux Falls contains vast areas of agricultural land on which urban, by the way, can't read everything the way the screen's organized, development will not be desirable during the planning period. Both city residents and the rural community have a fundamental interest in preventing scattered and haphazard development patterns in outlying areas. This is a key part of what they do now. Rural area development policies should continue to be planned jointly by the city of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, and Lincoln County. In areas where development will result in problems, which require extensive public and private expenditures to correct, existing and future landowners will be protected and government expenditures minimized by managing development in accordance with these policies. It sounds bland, but what they're saying is we're not going to have a bunch of sprawl outside the city limits with failing septic sewer systems, water depletion, and we have to then extend services to them. Let's not do that. Let's save the ag land. Let's save the taxpayers. So this is, I'm certainly not going to read all this, but this is what Sioux Falls has been doing for decades. They have a very clear, orderly and cost-effective extension and withholding of urban services, not providing it in some areas, providing others. It's all phased and planned, and they've been doing it for decades. Almost all programs like the one in Sioux Falls or in Frankenmuth or in Winters, California, or in Corvallis, the other side of it is infill and redevelopment strategies. This is downtown Sioux Falls, a lot more vibrant than it was. And I'm not going to show the other images, but these are logical connections. We're going to focus on the city, grow in a compact, efficient way, not spread tax dollars out, not destroy farmland, and reinvest in our existing community. So that's a logical part of the strategy. Now, what about when we get farther away from cities? What do we do to protect taxpayers? Well, you can have policies governing whether and when to provide rural services. Are you going to automatically provide fire protection, sheriff protection? Or are you going to say, well, in some areas we will, in others we really can't afford to do that because the people live in areas that are easy to serve are paying for the services for others. Now, by the way, I don't believe in the idea of development pay its way. I didn't pay for all the infrastructure around where I live. But I think there's a certain level of fairness that when people are imposing really significant costs, because you have to send a fire truck up a mile to one house, you need to think about whether or not you want to reflect that in what they're charged. So whether to provide services, what you pay for it, and here's another idea. How about a taxpayer impact statement when a development's proposed? Now, I'm going to talk about this subject for a while, rural resource land zoning. And because this is less commonly done in the United States, there's a tendency to apply concepts from city zoning, and they apply it to farming, ranching, timber production, and wildlife habitat. And those things, it's completely different. It's a very different approach, and you don't want to confuse those things. So here's an example. Homes on 1/2 acre, 1 acre lots can rightly be described as very low density residential use in a city. That is actually very low density in a city. But if you put that in a rural area, it's extremely high density. So you can't take that city term and put it in the country because it's a radically different context and you have to apply rural standards. Here's another example, and I've learned this very quickly. working with farmers and ranchers and foresters. Farm, ranch, and forest lands and wildlife habitat, natural resource areas are in fully productive use. There should not be described as undeveloped or vacant or land awaiting future division to home sites as their highest and best use. Well, highest and best use, by the way, is not a planning principle, it's a tax assessor terminology. So these lands are already in use. They're not waiting for development. They are already serving important functions. Let's talk particularly about agriculture districts and zones. What is agriculture? Okay, this seems like it'd be simple, but people get confused about this. So I think of it. Agriculture is the production of crops and livestock and non-food crops such as horticulture and marijuana, carried out as a business, a livelihood. So agriculture is a productive industry like making cars. It's not a lifestyle, a cultural heritage, a landscape, or a hobby. It's a business. It's how people make a living. This is how a lot of people still think about farming and ranching. This has not been agriculture for more than half a century. That's just 160-acre block with a house and a farm and someone living there. That's not agriculture today. I'm not talking about corporate farming, I'm talking about family farming. So here's some statistics from Montana. This is from the 2017 US Department of Agriculture Census of Agriculture. You can see that the average size of a farm in Montana is 2,149 acres, and the average gross sales are 140,000. Now, if you've been in business, you'll understand the difference between gross and net. But gross is all the money that's taken in without accounting for expenses. So if you operated a 7-Eleven, you might make $1 million in gross sales and you get $50,000 net, 5%. Agriculture is like that. It's a few percentage. Park County, you see 575 farms, quite a bit smaller, and the average gross sales a lot lower. Okay, for those of you not interested in this topic, you can take a quick little nap or refreshment break because I want to warn you about something. These statistics are based on the definition of agriculture used in the sense of agriculture that any place that produced and sold or normally could have sold $1,000 or more of agricultural products during the census year is a farm. $1,000 in gross sales in a year or potential gross sales in a year is a farm. What does it take to produce $1,000? Well, this is from the auction in Missoula in December. 1 cow. So if you have 10 acres and sell 1 cow a year, you're a farm in the sense of agriculture. So you've got to be very careful about using this as the basis for understanding farms. And in fact, a very high percentage of the quote farms in the senses of agriculture are making almost no money at all. So in the case of Park County, 205 of the 575 farms make less than $1,000 and their gross annual sales per farm is $88. Their average size is 684 acres. And you can see the farms on the right, $9,999. So even those numbers that you saw before that looked like a big size are actually including a lot of things that are really not in the business of farming. So here are questions that you often get at this point, I'm talking about size. Well, what about small farms? Can't they be productive too? Absolutely, absolutely. Small farms can make a lot of money, but the key is they're making money. It's a commercial enterprise. They might be growing organic produce for restaurants and so on. You get very high returns per acre. So those are real farms. But the fact that some farms are productive doesn't mean that every small 10-acre lot with a patch of rhubarb is a farm. Another point, but don't most farmers and ranchers have to have another job to make ends meet? Yes, just like the rest of us. Most households have 2 people working. It's difficult business. It doesn't mean that their main business is not farming. It means often they have to have supplementary income. And then, but don't farmers and ranchers need houses too? You can regulate it. Yes, but this goes back to my point about what farms are like. Most farms and ranches, or many of them, already own multiple homes because family farms and ranches have gotten bigger, we use machinery, are much more efficient. And most people don't start a business by building a house with the money for the business. So Bill Gates did borrow money to build his house and then start Microsoft. The investment goes into the actual farming activity. Can you hold on for just a minute? I'm sorry, this is from the governor's office. John? I'm right in the middle of a presentation. Can I call you back or can we schedule a time? Okay, how about 4:45? Would that be okay? All right, thank you, John, for calling back. Sorry to do that. I had to do that. Okay, agricultural districting or zoning, the first thing is, where is it applied to? Well, I'd say it's applied to land historically used or capable of use for farming and ranching. Be very careful. If we only protected prime farmland in the United States, you and I would be very hungry. That's a very small percentage of land, and it's prime because of the way it yields to cultivation. Some of very valuable crops are going to non-prime farmland, and certainly that is true for cattle production. What you see are three different approaches to identifying agricultural land around Livingston that have come up in the course of the growth policy update. On the left is a land cover, so it's actual use of the land. The middle is the Montana Cadastral Survey showing land classified for agriculture, for farming and irrigated farming or crop farming and pasturing. And on the right is another map showing land of statewide significance and other farmland. So any of those things would be a logical starting point for what you're going to have in this district. Another key point is you limit land divisions to maintain parcels in size that can be efficiently farmed or ranched. These are not 20 acres. You look at the pivot irrigation, those are 160 acres typically. No rancher loads up his cattle and drives 10 miles to put it into a 20-acre lot. And you're not going to take your very expensive wheat cultivation equipment and drive another 20 miles, another 10-acre parcel. With a few exceptions, land is farmed in large blocks because it's efficient and necessary. And once the land's divided up, it also becomes too expensive. So they're not good to use, they're more expensive. The farmers can't compete. Now, when I say land divisions, I'm not talking about lot sizes. These are not lot sizes for houses. These are lands remained in block for farming and ranching. So that's the second key element in agricultural zoning. And then you allow as of right, meaning no permits or any process, ranching, farming, and related buildings and activities. And we heard great testimony the other night in the Park County Planning Board about other activities that farmers and ranchers do to supplement their income. You know, like a bit of ability to hunt or fish, pay a fee for that, or maybe making some agricultural products on site or something like that. That all makes sense. That helps increase the farmer and rancher's income. Now this is, there's going to be a quiz on this page, so you need to read it quickly and memorize it. This is